live from the Bunker Studio in downtown Wexford, the metropolis, the very, very hot metropolis. You might hear sirens in the background, maybe the sound of helicopters. That's because it is the Red Book Show coming to you on Wexford New People's Movement Radio. Imagine a show, a radio station actually, having its headquarters inside a second-hand bookshop, and imagine four middle-aged men, slightly disgruntled, sitting there on a Tuesday evening. And you might realise what this show is all about. I'm Wally O'Neill, I'm a disgruntled bookseller, and I'm president of the Anti-Jeff Bezos Lonely Hearts Club. Send in your postcards, ladies. With me, as always, the wizard of wordplay, the maestro of metaphor, the oracle of open mics, Steve Unicky.
Hi, Wally. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
It's great to have you back again. And we're very excited with our guest this week. We have our old friend, star of many a Red Books video, and now the owner of the Nerd Up Empire. A great new business in Wexford Town, which is much more than a business, also a great community.
Yeah.
And as always, we're joined in studio by the Director General of Wexford New People's Movement Radio, Tony Bergen. Hi, Tony.
Hello, lads. How's it going?
So, Steve, it's been quite a week, a lot of book news.
Yeah. Let's go to it.
Well, Steve, have you heard about the Digital Delusion by Jared Cooney Horvath?
No, tell me more.
Well, this was a self-published book released last December, which is now fueling a movement against screen use in schools, particularly in America where it was launched. Jared Cooney Horvath, despite being a low-level academic, this was really his first book, and he has come out of nowhere really with this, and he ties the years-long decline in standardized test scores among American children to the rise of schools giving out laptops and tablets to kids. Now, you worked in the American education system.
That is completely believable to me, and I'll be honest with you. The American test scores on international tests were not that high to begin with. And I've experienced a battle with phones in the classroom. And I've tried to set down the rule of reason about this, but nevertheless, I can see what a huge distraction is, especially if the teacher's not prepared to sort of, take it head on,
And as a professor in a high-level academia in America, did you notice a clear dumbing down by the rollout of screen usage?
What I noticed was over like almost 40 years of teaching, I saw about 7 different generations of students, and I would always get alerted to a new generation like every 5 or 6 years, and then I realized I had to change what I'm doing. But this last generation was the first one that I saw just basically that they needed to be close to their phones, and they needed to be paying attention to their phones, and I was competing for their attention. I recognized that. So that was the last generation. And then I was out the door myself.
Well, Horvath argues students learn better on paper and through discussion than by over-reliance on screen usage. I think that's something on a personal level that I've noticed. I find that if I read an ebook, I don't retain the information the same way. I've always been a person who can read a book, leave it for 3 weeks and pick it up and know where I was in the book and be able to immerse myself in the story straight away again. I can't do that with ebooks, and I also can't do it by reading on digital devices. If I read a news story on a digital device, I usually don't retain it after a few days.
The research that I've seen is that reading, sort of flipping through your phone, reading, you start to skim, and then pretty soon you lose the patience to even read the whole story, and sometimes you just want to share the story without completely reading it, and this is a big problem. I find that if you read books, many books, like you have a depth of reading knowledge, there's nothing to replace that. There's nothing can substitute for that.
Absolutely. Well, in other news, and this directly affects you too, Steve, because not only were you an academic, but you're also a writer, a successful writer of haikus and essays. You've experienced AI slop, and this
I
is
have, yeah.
we've seen it, the overabundance of AI generated books. I think last year Amazon had to introduce a new rule, so you could only upload 3 books a day onto its publishing service, which is insane. Who did they think is writing 3 books a day? It's obviously AI generated nonsense. The movement to label books as human written, to take on the growing number of AI produced titles, is growing. And what they're talking about now is the need for an author label approval. It'd be similar to the Board BS stamp of approval here, if you're familiar with that. What do you think about that?
I think you have to do what's necessary, needs must, and you have to come to terms with every new development in technology, and you also have to keep the human intellect as the driving force in society. I don't know how to do that, but that's.
Do you think this is going to be an extra cost on authors? Are we going to have some governing body? Because I know when Board BA was introduced, it was very difficult on the common food producer to get a Board BA stamp straight away. So are we going to have a situation now, if you write a book, you're going to have to apply to some government authority to get their stamp of approval, just to prove that you're not artificial intelligence?
Sadly, maybe so. I haven't really thought about that deeply.
And we were talking last week about the way a lot of authors will be worried about AI detection software, because it looks at repetitive use of language, which some authors use for stylistic
reasons.
Yeah, I know later Shane will be on. Myself and Shane are both fans of Chuck Palahniuk, and he would be a big use of that, and the minimalist movement would use that a lot. So that is a problem, I think. In other news,
Yep.
and this is a direct quote from a Guardian headline: reading, Steve Unicky, reading is so sexy.
Wow.
Gen Z is leading the physical media revival and are citing physical books as essential carry-weight items, and reading as something that is seen as attractive and possible use in getting a mate.
Well, I don't know about getting a mate, but I'll tell you, if I see somebody walking down the street reading a book, which I did see in the Fife about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I see so many people down walking the street, and they look like they're staring at their phone and maybe going to have a head-on collision with you if you don't step out of their way. And I looked ahead, this young woman, I said, wow, she's got a really big phone, I got closer, I go, oh my God, she's like reading a book. And I said, excuse me, I'm an old guy, right? I didn't want to be weird or something, but I need to stop and talk to you. I said, I'm just amazed. I'm really happy to see you're walking down the street reading a book, because that was such a rare event.
Wow, that proves the point there, I guess.
Sparks flew, the rest is history.
The librarian aesthetic is now trending everywhere, and who'd have thought we would have people abandoning hot pants and belly tops for the librarian aesthetic? But that certainly seems to be the way, and this, of course, is being driven by Book Talk on one side on one spear. So Book Talk has become a huge influence. Definitely a great benefit to get people reading, younger people reading, but also a huge driver of the reader aesthetic. Whereas on the other side, it's been driven by the increasing amount of Gen Z who are getting into screen detox. They've grown up with these devices. They don't feel that the devices define them, as maybe some people in our generation do, sadly.
Yeah. I'm going to get into that a little bit later when we have our almanac, Dr. Unicky's almanac show. Maybe have a couple more comments on that.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing Dr. Unicky's almanac again. It's one of our regular features here on the Red Book Show now, which you are, of course, listening to on Wexford New People's Movement Radio. You can send us a text message in if you want to ask Steve about his karaoke, where he got his singing lessons from, or if you want to ask Shane Hurley some questions later on in the show. WhatsApp us now at 086 322 0546, 086 322 0546, or send us an email. That's redbookswexford@gmail.com, or send us a message on social media. Now, another regular feature in our show is the Uncensored Diary of a Bookseller. And this week, Steve, I went to, I've been reading Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. So you might get a bit of Conrad in this story of woe, which also ties in with our unfortunate decision this week to have to stop taking in donations of books. Not something that we wanted to do, but basically in the current retail situation, we find ourselves receiving a lot more books in than we're able to sell due to the quite substantial drop in footfall on every high street in the country at the moment. So this is a story about the graveyard of books. It was written, I should be loyal to the nightmare of my choice. Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad. In the mountains of the south, wedged between inbreeding and agriculture, lays the graveyard of Irish books. This is where your unwanted paperbacks come to await final verdict. The purgatory of the printed word. Where did you imagine all the books you donated to charity shops ended up? Where did you think your deceased father's book collection, which he painstakingly assembled over decades, relocated to after you callously called in the house clearance crew? Where did the countless unsold local histories, vanity published memoirs, or experimental novels finish their days? I can't fully describe the graveyard of Irish books to you, dear listener. It has to be seen, to be waded through, to truly understand it. To do this, one must travel into the netherworld of lost potentials and wasted culture, into the very heart of darkness. Like what I done there, Steve.
Yeah.
From the outside, it resembles just another abandoned IDA industrial estate. Corroded galvanized sheeting, unpainted concrete walls, empty broken parking lots, slowly being recolonized by Porsche buses, and hogweed like a hipster dream. A hollowed out 1988 high-ace van sits on concrete blocks near the gate, concealing an elderly obese German shepherd, the guardian of this alien landscape. The German shepherd, known only as the manager, is the guardian of this book purgatory. He may seem feeble and fat, but he can still sneakily bite a man on the ankle and infect him with rabies in the blink of an eye. What madman would ever venture into this hellish landscape, Steve? But this is all a ruse, a clever disguise
really?
To keep out readers. Within all the camouflage lays a sea of books, tidal waves of paperbacks and towering volcanic islands of bulky hardbacks. Inside the heavy set steel door, someone has scrawled a message in red spray paint on the bare concrete wall. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Inside is an overgrown jungle of lost books, pierced by flowing rivers of epic paperbacks and tundras of hardcover histories and philosophical inquiries, enticing you into the darkest centre. I wade through the rivers sometimes, knee high, more times up to my neck.
Up to your neck, I saw a picture of
Up
you.
to my neck.
Yeah.
Once I was completely submerged, Steve.
Yeah.
Swimming
Oh.
through dark and dry waters, enveloped by billions of words. I thought how nice it might be to slip away here, compressed by Hess, Nabokov, Balzac, the Bronte sisters, and Tolstoy. Lost in the sea of modernism, postmodernism, surrealism, and so many beautiful isms. And then an arm reaches down, wraps around my throat, and drags me to the surface. What do you think you're at, he cries. I'm not insured to have you dying in here. Kurtz regards me with contempt. It is he who grants some of us access into the realm without the knowledge of the book eaters who devour these ancient tomes like a tech guru on Epstein Island. He allows us few to be the Oscar Schindlers of books, saving some, dismissing others to a fate worse than obscurity, and he takes his job incredibly serious. What are you doing here again, Wally? This isn't your day. I was in the area, I lie. No one is ever in this area. This area is remote to keep people like you out. Kurtz snorts. He is one of the biggest book wholesalers in the state and deals with booksellers every day. He's heard all the excuses. He says, I just can't risk having you in here. You lose the run of yourself when you see all these books. It intoxicates you. It's like letting a mouse run free in a cheddar plant. And that is very true. These books are refugees of literature, Steve. You can't save them all, you know, Kurtz sneers. You should only pick the ones that sell fast. The rest, destroy them.
Oh, that's painful.
The very thought hurts my soul.
Yeah,
I feel crushed
painful.
by the existential prophecy of my life's work. And then I feel the manager's lockjaw wrapped around my groin. Time's up, Kurtz snarls. Maybe for browsing, or maybe for book selling itself.
Oh God. Hopefully not.
Dun,
Hopefully
dun,
not.
dun.
Great story, though.
Very good.
After that drama, I think it's time for a song. So we have I Just Land by Aideen Narita. Roll it there, Tony.